I spent a full year overseas working 12-hour days in punishing heat. Not the kind that just makes you sweat, but the kind that strips you down, grain by grain, until only the truth is left. No shade, no mercy. The sun hung overhead like an interrogation light that never shut off. Out there, noise fades. Status disappears. Paperwork, titles, all of it turns meaningless. All you crave is quiet. For me, that quiet had a shape. 6 acres of high desert perched on a hill outside a nowhere town most drivers never slowed down for. I bought that land 15 years earlier with money I earned the slow way. No windfalls, no shortcuts. I built a small house there with my own hands. No neighbors, no rules except gravity and weather. I made myself a promise back then. This place would remain untouched until the day I couldn't climb the porch steps anymore. So every night overseas, when the heat finally loosened its grip enough to breathe, I pictured that hill, the wind whispering through the scrub, the sunset washing the canyon in copper and gold. That image kept me standing when everything else felt temporary and disposable. When my contract finally ended, I landed back in the States worn down but steady. I rented a beat-up pickup at the airport, one headlight dimmer than the other, and headed north with the windows down. Arizona heat hits different. Familiar, honest, not pretending to be friendly, but not trying to dominate you either. 3 hours later, pavement gave way to gravel, gravel to dirt. Muscle memory took over. Every curve in the road, every leaning fence post, every mesquite tree bent like it had something to whisper to the wind. I knew them all. I wasn't expecting surprises. Before leaving, I'd done everything right. Filed notices with the county, locked the well, shut off utilities, even taped a laminated sign inside the window. Temporary absence, not abandoned. People lose land because they assume systems protect them. I never made that mistake. The hill came into view, just like always, bleached gold under the sun. My chest tightened the way it always did. Relief. Home. For half a second, I could almost hear the porch boards creak under my boots. Then something caught the light that didn't belong. At first, I thought it was heat shimmer. Long drives mess with your eyes. But this didn't move. It stood straight. Deliberate. A fence, tall, new, fresh cedar, right where my old split-rail fence used to be. I slowed the truck. Then I saw rooftops. 3 of them. Stucco walls in soft pastel colors. Tile roofs gleaming like they'd been dropped in from a brochure. My stomach didn't lurch. It went still. I pulled over and shut off the engine. The silence felt wrong. Too full. Beyond the fence, my house sat where it always had. Small, square, except now it looked like a relic. A leftover artifact boxed in by strangers who didn't know its name. The wind carried unfamiliar sounds. Air conditioners humming. Laughter. The clink of glass. People sat on porches, mid-40s maybe, wine glasses in hand, relaxed like they'd earned the view. On my land. One of them waved at me. Not friendly. The kind of wave you give when you think someone else doesn't belong. That's when I noticed a sign bolted to the gate. A silver crest in a circle. Private community. Residents only. The HOA logo stamped clean and confident at the bottom. Shock only lasts as long as denial allows. For me, maybe 5 seconds. After that, something else settled in. Not panic, not confusion. Insult. I walked toward the gate, boots sinking into the dirt. I knew that land better than my own handwriting. The metal was warm beneath my fingers. New bolts. New lock. New lie. That's when she appeared. She stepped out from one of the houses like she'd been waiting for her cue. Business suit. Clipboard pressed to her chest. Phone already in her hand. Sunglasses expensive enough to tell you dust had never been a concern. Her walk was precise, heels clicking against fresh concrete like punctuation marks. She stopped a few feet from the gate and tilted her head, studying me the way people do when they're deciding whether you're worth their time. Can I help you? Perfect tone, calm, polite, and condescending in that effortless way that assumes authority without proving it. Yeah, I said, you can explain why there are 3 houses on my land. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm sorry. Your land? I nodded toward the hill. That house up there has been mine 15 years. Bought and paid for. She adjusted her sunglasses like the sun had personally offended her. You're probably looking for the management office. South unit, past a stone walkway. No, I said, I'm looking for an explanation. Something flickered behind the lenses. Not surprise. Annoyance. Like a teacher dealing with a student who should already know better. Well, she said, voice smooth as sugar. According to our records, this parcel was classified as transitional use after extended non-occupancy. No utilities. No mail service. No response to county notices. That's impossible, I said. I filed documentation before I left. I'm afraid the process moved forward in your absence. She flipped a page on the clipboard like she was reading a grocery list. Silver crest circle applied for emergency housing authorization. Everything was approved. Approved by who? The county, she said, smiling tighter. All by the book. That word, book, landed like a spark in dry grass. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You built past my fence line, tapped my utilities, locked my gate, and you think I'm a problem? She clasped her hands neatly. I understand this is upsetting, but you have to see it from the community's perspective. The land was vacant. We improved it. Improved it for who? Her smile sharpened. Everyone who matters. The desert fell silent around us. Wind slid along the fence line. Somewhere above, a hawk carved a lazy circle over the ridge. She extended her hand. Perfect nails, perfect confidence. Malene Cross, she said, president of the Silver Crest Circle HOA. Welcome to the neighborhood. I didn't take her hand. I turned back toward my truck instead, every step measured. At the door, I looked back once more at the sign on the gate. Private community. Residents only. Under my breath, I said it out loud. Not anymore. I drove the perimeter road that used to be my fence line. Asphalt where dirt once was. Painted curbs where scrub had grown. But underneath it all, I could still feel the land. The slopes, the dips, the memory. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't mistake. This was a takeover. And whether they realize it yet or not, they just picked a fight with the wrong kind of quiet. Now pause the movie for a second, because this is where most people get lost. And honestly, that's what HOAs count on. Land doesn't just stop being yours because you went quiet for a while. In most counties, especially rural ones, ownership doesn't vanish without due process. And due process is slow, boring, and loud on paper. Notices, certified mail, public postings, time buffers, appeals, friction by design. So when someone starts throwing around phrases like transitional use or emergency housing authorization, that's your first red flag. Those terms exist, but they're meant for narrow situations. Disaster zones, condemned buildings, real abandonment. Not someone who shut off utilities and filed paperwork. From a legal standpoint, Malene wasn't explaining policy. She was rewriting reality. Notice her language. The process moved forward. It was approved. The land was classified. No one is responsible in those sentences, and that's intentional. It creates distance between decisions and the people who made them. This is a psychological trap. Authority mixed with ambiguity. When someone sounds confident and technical enough, most people freeze. They assume they missed a memo. They start second-guessing their own memory. They ask permission on land they already own. HOAs thrive in that gray space because fear fills silence faster than facts ever could. They don't need you to agree with them. They just need you to hesitate long enough for concrete to harden and paperwork to pile up. And here's the part most people don't understand. Once construction begins, the balance of power shifts. The longer a structure stands, the harder it becomes to undo. That's not law. That's leverage. The lesson is simple and uncomfortable. Silence can be used as a weapon. Systems don't protect the absent. They protect the present, the persistent, and the people who know how to sound official while crossing lines. All right, back to the story, because this is where quiet turns into momentum. I didn't sleep that night. Not the dramatic kind where you stare at the ceiling replaying arguments. This was quieter than that. I sat at a cheap motel table just off the highway, the kind with a flickering lamp and a chair that never quite stops wobbling. spreading papers out like I was mapping a crime scene. Dates, purchase records, county filings, notarized service agreements. Every document clean, boring, legitimate. The kind of paperwork that used to calm me down. Now it just made me angry because every single page said the same thing. This land was mine. No loopholes. No expiration date. No, unless someone else wants it badly enough. At sunrise, I was parked outside the county records office. Same sun-faded brick. Same flag tangled halfway up the pole. Inside smelled like old toner, dust, and air conditioning that gave up before noon. I slid my folder across the counter. I need to pull property files under my name. The clerk typed frowned, then turned the screen toward me. Looks like we got two. That's when my stomach dropped. The second file wasn't subtle. A scanned affidavit claiming intent to vacate and forfeit. My name signed in handwriting that tried too hard. A co-signer listed beneath it, my father, dead for 7 years. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room quieted on its own. Even the clerk felt it. This wasn't paperwork error. That's not my signature, I said. And he didn't sign anything. He's buried in Nevada. The clerk swallowed. It went through. Yeah, I said, that's the problem. By noon, I had copies of everything. Metadata, timestamps, filing logs, the kind of paper trail people assume no one will ever examine closely. My next stop was zoning and planning. Different building, same bureaucratic smell, pretending to be neutral. Every permit traced back to the same supervisor. Approvals dated after construction had already begun. Photos didn't lie, even when people did. When I stepped back into the heat, something settled in me. Not rage. Focus. This wasn't a shouting match. This was chess. I made 3 calls that afternoon. The first was to a lawyer who scared people with calm sentences and clean shoes. She didn't interrupt, just listened. When I finished, she said, "Don't talk to the county again. Email me everything." The second call was to a cybersecurity specialist who trusted logs more than humans. He didn't ask why, just said, "Send it." The third was to a retired investigator who'd spent decades proving that polite criminals are still criminals. She laughed when I told her it was an HOA. "That's a new flavor," she said. "I'll start with the neighbors." By sunset, the plan was moving. The first crack came from the cameras. My old security system, the one I'd left running locally, had been accessed remotely, footage wiped. Downtime looped to look like a malfunction. The access logs pointed to one place, the HOA's admin office. Same IP range, same timestamps. Buried inside the authorization trail was a familiar name, the zoning supervisor who had conveniently gone on leave. That's when the situation stopped being messy and started being obvious. Drone footage sealed it. Foundations dug months before permits were issued. Contractors paid through shell companies. Paperwork backfilled to make reality appear compliant. And then there was the memo. 15 words. Internal. Casual. Damning. Prepare the parcel for full integration. Assume he won't come back. That sentence didn't make me angry. It made me calm. Because once intent is written down, the fight is already half over. The first courtroom wasn't dramatic. Low ceiling, stale coffee, neutral carpet chosen specifically to make everything feel like it didn't matter. Malene sat across from me in a perfect suit, posture untouched, flanked by a lawyer who smiled too often. I played tired, let my shoulders slump, kept my voice quiet. "I just want my home," I said. She nodded sympathetically. We acted in good faith. Dana, my lawyer, didn't argue. She waited. Then she asked one question. "Who notarized your filings?" Malene answered too fast. Contracted service. That was it. The slip, not a crime by itself, but a door left unlocked. From there, the room changed temperature. Digital certificates didn't line up. Notary commissions didn't exist. IP logs pointed inward, not outward. When the mediator called for a recess, Malene's lawyer didn't look confident anymore. He looked busy. 2 weeks later, the real courtroom filled. Reporters, neighbors, people who enjoy watching authority squirm when it stops working. The judge listened, patient, exacting, as witnesses lined up like dominoes. The clerk, the notary, the contractor, the drone hobbyist who had accidentally documented the entire timeline because he liked filming sunsets. Then the cyber logs, explained slowly, clearly, no theatrics, just cause and effect. When the memo entered evidence, you could feel the air shift. Malene didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, jaw locked, like discipline alone could hold the walls in place. The ruling came clean and direct. Full restoration of property rights. Structures deemed unauthorized. Compensation ordered. Records forwarded for a criminal investigation. The words mattered. But the sound that stayed with me was the click. Handcuffs closing behind her wrists. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. She looked at me once as they led her away. Not angry, confused, like someone who had always believed rules bent toward confidence. They don't. They bend toward proof. A month later, the HOA dissolved. Accounts frozen. Board members scattered like roaches when the lights come on. The zoning supervisor resigned quietly. Charges followed. I went back to the Hill alone. One evening, the fence was still standing, but it looked smaller now. Just wood and wire pretending to be power. My house waited the way it always had. Same porch, same wind, same silence. Finally returned. The other houses stayed too. I could have torn them down. But there's something satisfying about letting stolen things pay rent. So I kept them, fixed them, let the desert back into the walls. And every night when the sun drops behind a canyon, I sit on the porch and listen, not to victory, not to revenge, just a quiet that knows who it belongs to. After everything's settled, after the hearings, the headlines, the neighbors stopping by just a look, I expected to feel something louder, relief, triumph, maybe anger finally burning itself out. What I felt instead was quiet, not the empty kind, the earned kind. That surprised me, because stories like this are usually told like explosions. Someone wins, someone loses. Cue the music. Real life doesn't work that way. Real justice is slow, procedural, almost boring when it's done right. And that's the point. The lesson here isn't that I beat an HOA, that framing misses a truth. What actually happened is that a system designed to be ignored failed the moment someone decided to read it carefully. HOAs, zoning boards, planning offices, they don't run on force. They run on assumption, on people being busy, tired, intimidated, or unsure. They rely on the idea that authority sounds like truth, that most people won't challenge it once concrete has been poured and confidence has been projected. This is a psychological trap. When someone speaks in polished language, cites policy, and stands behind a logo, your brain wants to cooperate. You assume you're missing context. You assume they know something you don't. That hesitation is where power changes hands. From a legal perspective, what saved me wasn't cleverness. It was documentation. Boring, unglamorous, completely unsexy documentation. Deeds, logs, metadata, timelines. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs structure. And here's the part people don't like to hear. The system didn't protect me automatically. It only worked after I forced it to look at itself. Laws don't enforce themselves. Rights don't defend themselves. They just sit there, waiting to see who's willing to stay present long enough to use them. That's why absence matters. Not morally, practically. Silence isn't surrender, but only if it's paired with preparation. Without that, silence gets interpreted as consent, and consent gets paved over. I think about Malene sometimes, not with anger, with curiosity. People like her don't see themselves as villains. They see themselves as efficient, as organizers, as people making things better. Power has a way of convincing you that outcomes justify shortcuts, especially when the person on the other end feels abstract. That's the danger. When land becomes a parcel, when people become non-responsive owners, when signatures become administrative necessities, distance makes wrongdoing feel clean. But paper doesn't erase reality. It only delays it. What stayed with me most wasn't the courtroom or the arrest. It was standing back on my porch afterward, listening to the wind move through the canyon like it always had. The land didn't celebrate. It didn't care about verdicts. It just waited, patient, enduring. Ownership isn't just a legal concept. It's a relationship. You show up. You maintain it. You know its history. And when someone tries to rewrite that story without you, the problem isn't just legal. It's human. So if there's a takeaway worth carrying, it's this. Don't confuse quiet with weakness. Don't assume professionalism equals legitimacy. And never believe complexity means inevitability. Systems are built by people. That means they can be challenged by people. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as a stack of papers, a calm voice, and the willingness to stay longer than a lie can. I didn't fight because I wanted revenge. I fought because leaving would have taught the wrong lesson, especially to myself. Now the hill is quiet again, not empty, grounded, honest. And when people ask why I didn't just sell or walk away, or take the loss, I get the same answer every time. Some things aren't replaceable. And some lines, once crossed, deserve to be drawn back clearly. That's my story. But I'm curious about yours. Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a landlord, or a local authority that overstepped and assumed you wouldn't push back? Did you fight it, walk away, or freeze somewhere in the middle? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Because the quieter these stories stay, the easier they are to repeat.